Hey, it's Nexus. You sat down to watch one video. Just one. And then it was 45 minutes later. The video playing now has nothing to do with anything you started with. You don't even remember clicking on it. You're not sure you're enjoying it, but you're still watching. Same. Here's the thing about that moment, and it's a moment most of us know very well. You didn't decide to stay. There was no point where you thought, yes, I want to keep going. It just kept going. The next video started, and then the one after that. And somewhere in there, the original reason you picked up your phone, that small, specific thing, quietly disappeared. You were still there, still scrolling, still half watching something you didn't choose, in a room that got darker without you noticing.
That feeling of being present, but not quite here. Most people don't talk about it, and honestly, it doesn't feel dramatic enough to bring up. But it happens a lot, more than we usually admit. And then comes the familiar version of the story, that something is wrong with you, that this is weakness, that people with more self-discipline don't end up here at midnight watching a video about a topic they have no memory of searching for. We've all been told that one. Most of us have heard that version of the story. It's also missing most of the picture. The thing is, that's not a bug. That's exactly what it was built to do. And the story of how we got here is stranger than the one you've probably been told.
The strange thing about all of this, the scrolling, the concern, the brain rot conversation, is that almost everyone agrees something has changed. We just can't agree on what. And that gap is where this story gets interesting. Think about the last time you noticed the time was gone. Not checked it, actually noticed it. That moment of looking up and realizing you're further into the night than you expected. Where were you? What were you watching? Don't answer that. Just hold it. Because here's what's clear. Attention patterns have changed. And that part isn't panic, and it isn't conspiracy. There's real data here. Real children who were followed over real years, producing findings that held up across large samples. One study followed over 7,000 mother-child pairs. Children watching 4 or more hours of screens a day at age 1 had nearly double the risk of communication and problem-solving delays at ages 2 and 4. Double. Not triple. Not extreme. Double. In a specific group, under specific conditions. But the finding is real. And that opened a bigger question about what repeated early exposure actually does to a developing brain.
This is the part I feel most certain about in this entire episode. A study published in 2025 followed over 10,000 children for 2 years. They measured screen time at the start, then came back 2 years later and looked at what had changed. What they found was measurable thinning. In 3 specific regions, the right temporal pole, the left superior frontal gyrus, and the left rostral middle frontal gyrus. These are regions that handle attention and self-control. The effect wasn't large, around minus 0.03 on a comparable scale, but it was consistent across 10,000 children over 2 years. That's not nothing.
Now, this matters. These are young brains in a critical window where repeated input shapes structure more than at almost any other point in life, and that ability to change and adapt runs in both directions. The story for adults with moderate use is different. We'll get there. But for young, developing brains under heavy exposure, the data is real and worth sitting with. So that's one part of the picture. Here's the part that complicates everything.
The most widely repeated number in this entire conversation, the one behind dozens of alarming headlines, is 8.25 seconds. The human attention span. 8 seconds. Less than a goldfish. It was never real. Researchers traced it back. The source cited a website that never explained where the number came from. Nobody checked. The number spread anyway. A researcher who had spent 20 years measuring students' attention said it plainly. Remarkably stable across decades. That number has been in hundreds of articles, on TED stages, in boardroom presentations. Nobody went back to find it. The irony in an episode about attention doesn't really need pointing out. Some things have changed measurably in young brains under heavy use. That part is real. But raw attention capacity? The evidence says remarkably stable, which means something else changed. And that something else is what nobody's talking about.
So, if attention capacity hasn't really changed, what has? Here's where the story gets strange. It's not about the video. It's about the half second before you know what the video is. Think about what actually happens when you scroll. You're not responding to something good. You're responding to not knowing yet. The next video hasn't loaded. The outcome is unpredictable. And something in us stays very, very alert in that gap. Not because we're weak, but because that alertness was exactly what that system was built to do. Dopamine doesn't fire when something good arrives. It fires when something good might. The prediction gap, that small window of uncertainty between reaching and receiving, that's where the pull lives. Not in the reward, in the space before it. This is why the most compelling moment in a scroll isn't the video you land on. It's the moment just after you swipe, before the next one loads. Your system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It's scanning, it's waiting, it's staying alert for the outcome that hasn't arrived yet. And that system is very, very old. Somewhere around 500 years before the Common Era, someone was already watching this pattern very closely. Not in a lab, not with data, but with careful, sustained attention to what the mind actually does when it reaches for something. The observation was this: the wanting is more compelling than the getting. The reaching is more powerful than the arrival. Craving, the anticipation of the thing, was its own kind of experience, not the object of the craving, the craving itself. 2,500 years ago, that had a name. The word is tanha, craving. Not hunger for the thing, hunger for the moment just before you have it. The pull toward the not yet known. And then, in the late 1990s, researchers studying how dopamine works found the same pattern. Not through meditation, not through philosophy, through primates and prediction models and reward timing experiments. They discovered that dopamine activity didn't track the reward, it tracked the anticipation, the gap, the half second of not knowing yet. Two traditions, completely separate, same conclusion. The wanting was always the engine, not the getting.
I'm about to introduce you to the oldest part of this story. It doesn't speak in sentences. It speaks in urges.
What's next? What's next? It could be exactly what we need. We have to check. What if we miss it?
He's not wrong. That's the problem. This isn't broken. This is an ancient system meeting an infinitely patient lever. It's not the video you're addicted to. It's the half second before you know what it is. There's a gesture most of us make without thinking. When nothing's loading fast enough, we pull down on the screen and release, like pulling a lever. Nobody told us to do that. We just learned it. We discovered it the way you discover any behavior that works, by doing it once, getting something, and doing it again. What's changed isn't raw attention. It's the threshold. How long we'll stay in quiet before reaching for the lever. And using the lever trains that threshold to keep moving. One study tracked this daily for 2 weeks. Higher phone use today predicted lower distress tolerance tomorrow. Not a permanent condition, not a character flaw. It wasn't measuring something fixed about the person. It was measuring something that was actively adjusting. The tolerance for stillness, for the boring, low stimulation moment before something interesting arrives. That tolerance was shifting. Not because something was wrong with the people in the study, because the system they were using was very good at teaching their nervous systems what to expect. Day by day, use by use, a moving threshold, moving in one direction. That gesture, pull down, release, that's a lever. The reward comes after an unpredictable number of pulls. Sometimes on the 3rd, sometimes on the 30th. You never know which pull it will be. That gap between reaching and not knowing yet, that's what keeps the behavior going. B.F. Skinner documented this in 1938. He called it variable ratio reinforcement. It produces the strongest, most persistent behavior of any reward schedule ever studied. Harder to stop than getting a reward every time. Harder to walk away from than a system that rewards you never. The scroll was built to copy it. That gesture you learned without anyone teaching you. Pull down, release, wait. It was already a design decision before you ever picked up the phone. Not by accident, as a feature. The business model is simple. More time on platform equals more ads seen equals more revenue. One platform alone, approximately $23 billion in revenue in 2024. The average user, 95 minutes a day.
When you look at those numbers together, the logic is clear. Getting you to stay as long as possible isn't a side effect of the business. It is the business. And here's what that means in practice. Well-being and maximum engagement are often in tension. They pull against each other. When they do, the business has already decided which one it optimizes for.
There's a detail that tends to get buried in all of this. A former employee, someone who had worked inside one of these platforms at a senior level, sent emails directly to leadership about harm data, research the company had already done internally on its own users. The findings were real. The decision that followed was not to act on them. The reason documented was that making changes would affect engagement metrics. This is not a theory. This is documented. Public record. Every generation believes it invented the ability to waste time. The Romans built an arena that held 150,000 people for chariot races. Not once, regularly. Victorian England had penny dreadfuls, cheap short stories sold for a penny, full of crime and drama, that moralists said were destroying the young. The 1940s had radio soap operas that ran 5 days a week, 15-minute daily serials that critics called a threat to civilization. James Thurber wrote screeds about them. The language was nearly identical to today. Addictive. Rotting the mind. The format changes. The human doesn't. We're not special. We're just faster.
There's a word for what's happening to you. It's called brain rot. That's it. That's the diagnosis. 45 minutes gone, and somewhere along the way, your brain rotted. Cognitive decline, character failure, a problem that runs across your whole generation. All of it collapsed into 2 words. All of it pointing directly at you. Here's what we know about labels. When you receive one, anyone, your anxiety goes up. Your sense of being able to change things goes down. The bigger the label, the more likely you are to take it in as something you are, not just something you do. And brain rot is about as big as a label gets. It doesn't describe a behavior. It describes a condition. It describes you. We know from decades of research that labels activate the exact behavior they describe. Not because you're weak, because that's how labels work. The name lands, the self-concept shifts. The attention pulls inward around confirming the name. The label becomes what it names.
Running diagnostic. Input, 45 minutes unaccounted for. Sustained attention failure. Output, user error. Recommendation, reduce usage. Diagnosis, brain rot.
Though not everyone holds the label the same way. Some people use brain rot as a genre, a rest mode, a way of naming content they enjoy without taking it too seriously. The harm isn't in the word itself. It's in what happens when the word stops being a joke and starts feeling like a real verdict. It's in believing it. There's a difference.
the diagnosis is performing the damage it describes. That is inefficient.
Who decided what normal attention looks like? Factory-era sustained focus was historically unusual. Modern knowledge work, requiring extended concentration on abstract tasks, also historically unusual. Is difficulty focusing a disorder? Or a mismatch between a nervous system shaped over 300,000 years and an environment designed in the last 200?
That question doesn't get a clean answer. It wasn't meant to. Here's what I keep coming back to. There's a difference between a broken thing and a thing being used in the wrong conditions. That distinction matters, not just as an idea, in practice. Brain rot is a personal diagnosis for a structural problem. Notice what job gets easier when the dominant narrative is, "My brain is rotting from using this app." The structural question? Why was the app designed to be used this way? Disappears. The individual absorbs the problem. The design stays invisible. That's not an accident. That's what makes the design so effective. The platform keeps running exactly as it was built to run. And you're left managing something that was built into your behavior by someone else, in a room you were never in, making a decision you were never asked about. And so you carry it, the weight of a condition that was never really yours. You didn't rot. You were designed to be exploited. Those are very different things. A man named Pascal wrote this in 1660. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He was not predicting TikTok. He was noticing something already old. He was sitting in a quiet room, probably, and feeling the pull. The feeling that something needed to be checked. Something outside that room that might be happening without him. There was nothing to check, and yet the pull was still there. No platform, no feed, no algorithm deciding what came next. Just a man, a room, and that restless pull toward the door. The sense that something out there needed attending to, even when nothing did. Who decides what normal sitting still looks like? That question didn't have a clean answer in 1660 either. It didn't then. It doesn't now. People have always reached for something when stillness felt like too much. What they reached for changed across the centuries. Gossip, penny novels, radio serials, a window, a fire. The speed of the reaching changed. What stayed constant was the reaching itself. Something underneath it stayed the same. That quiet unease, that sense of incompleteness. The feeling that what you're looking for might be just one more thing away. The restlessness is not new. The lever is just better engineered. And here's the thing about your attention. It didn't fail. It didn't go somewhere it wasn't supposed to. It responded exactly the way attention responds when something knows precisely how to ask for it. Your attention isn't broken. It found something that knew exactly how to use it
Which is also why this is complicated. Because the same attention that got caught, that's the one you're searching with. The system wasn't built for what you're looking for. If the platform disappeared tomorrow, what would you reach for next? Think about that. I genuinely don't know the answer to that.